All right, it's 8 p.m. Central right now, so we are going to begin the program. And if at any time you need to leave, you are completely welcome to do that because we are recording this session and the recorded videos link will be sent out to any participants that weren't able to partake in this presentation. So if y'all can give me a thumbs up, just to see, whether or not you can see the screen, just a virtual thumbs up. I think there's an option. Okay, great. Thank you, Ria. Thank you, Donna. Okay, so we have a wonderful presenter today. Her name is Dr. Bhavna Jois. She'll be talking to us. And just some housekeeping rules. Please keep your video and your sound off so that it doesn't pose as a distraction to the speaker. And just wait to ask any questions until the very end so that the presenter is able to go through her presentation. And as always, this is recorded. All right, so the objectives for today's meeting. So we'll be going over the founder and program introduction, meeting the speaker of the day. And of course, you are allowed to ask questions in the chat, and we are allowing you to ask questions out loud if you want to. And there is a post-meeting survey that will be sent out at the end of this week. And again, please keep your sound and video off, and spamming is not allowed in the chat area. So just be respectful. We are all here together. Right, so what is Girls to Industry? So Girls to Industry is actually a 501c3 fiscally sponsored nonprofit, which means that we are backed by a bank to uphold any operations. They take care of our legal background, and it's really an easy way to start a nonprofit if you are looking to start one on your own. The goal for Girls to Industry is to bring more women into leadership roles in the pharmaceutical, biotech, and healthcare industries, because right now there isn't really enough women who are in enough leadership roles. And we are just working to move towards a point where there will be a lot more women who are in these roles. And this year's program and any program that's following this year will be entirely virtual, and it is 4 weeks with 2 speakers every week. And as far as the certificate of completion, you have the choice to attend any 6 presentations out of the 8 that we have. And if you're not able to attend the live presentations, that is completely fine as well. You can definitely just watch the live recorded video and then complete the post survey, noting whether or not you attended the live session or the recorded. The advantage of attending a live session is that you have your questions answered by the presenter herself. And if you haven't done so already, there is a pre-assessment that was put into the Slack. So please join the Slack, and of course, send me an email if you did not receive the link to the Slack. And there will be post-assessments as well after each presentation that we have. And this is just a little bit about me. I am an incoming PharmD student, and I'll be going to the University of Houston College of Pharmacy. The reason why I wanted to create this organization is because, similar to all of you, I also want to work in the industrial pharmacy or healthcare management sector, and I wanted to uplift women who also wanted to go down that route as well. So I thought, why not create a nonprofit? And this was the way that I created it. And hopefully that also inspires some of you to also look into building your own nonprofits or startups or anything that you're interested for in the future. So now we are going to turn it over to our speaker. And Dr. Bhavna Jois, you are welcome to unmute.
Hi, everyone. Do I share my screen, or are we just going to use yours? You're muted, but I got you. Can you guys see that?
Yes, we can see that.
All right, I don't know why it's saying it's not. Okay, whatever. Anyways, hi everyone. My name is Bhavna Jois. It's my pleasure to be here with you all tonight, to talk a little bit about myself and my experiences. I just graduated with my PharmD and my master's, which I'll talk about a little bit later. And right now I'm a medical affairs fellow at Alnylam Pharmaceuticals. And so I've kind of always, throughout pharmacy school, I was always interested in pursuing a career within industry and biotech. And so I'll also talk a little bit about that later on in this presentation. But before that, so just a little bit personal background of mine. I'm born and raised in Maryland. I've lived there my whole life. And I had a pretty busy childhood, so I've always been pretty good at managing my time. I was on a swim team, I coached kids as well, and I learned Indian classical singing and dancing throughout my childhood. And then throughout undergrad, I had a lot of basic science, wet lab research experience, mostly in pharmacology because I was particularly interested in how drugs work. And I was on track to apply to grad school and get my PhD. But throughout those research experiences that I had, I felt like I was missing the bigger clinical picture. How is all of this work going to translate to patients and actual healthcare? And so I decided to go to pharmacy school because you kind of get both sides of that. You get the basic science and the chemistry, but then you also get the clinical application. And I always wanted to do something non-traditional with that knowledge. And so I decided to take a gap year after my undergrad and wanted to just make some money before professional school. And so I worked in a clinical pharmacology lab at Johns Hopkins School of Medicine. And there we were supporting pharmacokinetic and pharmacodynamic studies for HIV therapy clinical trials. And those are big words, but basically what that means is we would measure drug concentrations in different tissues. So things like blood, plasma, um, other bodily fluids, just to get a better idea of how the drug's local and systemic behavior and action would perform. And so through supporting these different clinical trials, that's kind of how I learned more about the drug industry and drug development. And I also learned about the potential roles for pharmacists within the industry and career routes as well as I was doing more research. So there's like fellowship, regular full-time employee. You can work for different vendors and contract research organizations, consulting. It's endless. The FDA, there's so many options. And so, long story short, I came into pharmacy school wanting to pursue an industry career, like I mentioned before, but this is kind of all what led up to that. So I alluded to this before, but my education has been all in Maryland and has all revolved around the city of Baltimore. So I went to the University of Maryland, Baltimore County, and I got my bachelor's in biochemistry and molecular biology. And then I took my gap year, and then I attended the University of Maryland School of Pharmacy to get my PharmD. And then in the beginning of my third year of pharmacy school, I started a concurrent master's in regulatory science that was offered at my school. And so this last May, I graduated with my PharmD and my master's. Does someone have a question? Okay, I thought I heard something. And so because I have my PharmD, this presentation is a little more geared towards that and kind of those experiences that I had. I was asked, during undergrad, what classes did I take to kind of further my knowledge of industry, and it wasn't much, but I can say that some of the elective courses that I took during undergrad really stood out to me and really helped me learn more about, like I said, the pharmacology and kind of that more basic science that industry is built off of. So UMBC offered a course called Principles of Drug Design and Development, which was really cool. I was a biochemistry major, so biochemistry was really applicable to some of the fundamentals that we learn in pharmacy school. And then anatomy as well, just, learning about the human body and then drugs working in the human body. So that was something that was helpful, and I enjoyed the class as well. And so throughout pharmacy school, I was very involved in different organizations. My main one was the Academy of Managed Care Pharmacy, or AMCP. And for those of you who aren't familiar, managed care is kind of this obscure field that not a lot of people know about. But managed care basically involves working for a health plan or an insurance company and just ensuring the appropriateness and cost effectiveness of clinical decisions. So when a prescriber prescribes a medication, you take it to the pharmacy, they run it through your insurance, and there's someone on the other side there ensuring that that prescription is appropriate, it's cost effective. If the insurance plan doesn't cover it, or if they cover it, and if they don't, then they'll try to go through various routes to basically deliver the right medication to the right patient. And so through AMCP, I was involved in that my entire pharmacy school time. So during my P1 year, I was a historian, and then I was elected into the president-elect position my second year. And then I assumed the role of president my third year, and then continued my involvement during my fourth year while I was on rotations. And then some of the other organizations I was involved in is APHA, which is just kind of the big pharmacy organization. And so within that, I was in Operation Heart because I have a particular interest in cardiology. And then I was in a couple of professional fraternities. So Phi Lambda Sigma is the Pharmacy Leadership Society. Rho Chi is the Honor Society. And then Phi Delta Chi is just another pharmacy fraternity that I was very active in.
Bhavna, I have a question. Are you shifting through the slides because the participants can't see the other slides?
Oh, I am. Maybe that's what this is telling me.
Okay, yes, there we can see it.
Okay, did that go to the next one?
Yes, that did.
Okay, well, this was the last slide, and then this is the slide that I was on. And yeah, so what was I gonna say? Oh yeah, so I was gonna say, so school is important, of course, but I truly believe that being involved in extracurriculars really help develop your soft skills. So things like written and oral communication, working on a team, solving problems, and especially with something like managed care, where at least from a pharmacy perspective, we don't get too much exposure to that in the didactic pharmacy curriculum. Just having knowledge of the healthcare system that we're working for really helped me stand out in some of the conversations that I've had in interviews and just general networking. So moving on, in addition to my direct pharmacy school experiences, I did a few internships within the industry. So my first internship was within regulatory affairs at Takeda. Then I did a clinical operations internship at Pharmacyclics, which has now been kind of engulfed by AbbVie. And then last summer, I did a medical communications internship at BioMarin, and I loved it so much. And so I ended up pursuing a scientific communications rotation during pharmacy school. And so I did that in September. And then in addition to all of this, I also did multiple research projects within health economics and outcomes research, which is kind of moving away from the wet lab and the basic science and more into, diving into the literature to see, health economic, like seeing how we can optimize medication use, basically. And so other things that I did during pharmacy school, I went to a ton of conferences. Being a part of organizations really gives you that opportunity and gets you that exposure. And through that, that's where I really heavily built my network with professionals, with fellows, and even with other students. I made so many dear friends through conferences, so it's always a good time. And so participating in these networking and professional development experiences really further develops those hard and soft skills that I was talking about before. And you just make those like lifelong connections with people. So it's always a good opportunity to attend conferences if it's in your budget and in your time bandwidth. And so through all of this, I decided to go the fellowship route because I wanted a learning experience that would provide me with the flexibility to take on whatever projects I was interested in. versus like a full-time position role where you're kind of limited by your specific job description and you're kind of siloed into what those responsibilities are. And so I believe that a good fellowship really sets you up for more potential and greater success out of the fellowship. So that's kind of why I was interested in going down that route. And so right before the application and interview season, I reached out to current PharmD fellows to learn more about their roles, to learn more about the company and their motivation for pursuing their current positions. I did extensive research on the companies I was most interested in, their pipeline, their commercial products, the company culture, and I also made sure that I could speak to every experience that I had listed on my CV. And then during last year's application cycle, of course, everything was virtual due to COVID, and it was better in some ways and then worse in others. Throughout the whole process, it was just so important to stay organized with all of the different program timelines, keeping people's names and roles straight, keeping the program information straight in your head. You know, different programs are structured differently, so just making sure you're not confusing things. So spreadsheets, Google calendars, whatever method of organization you use, those were my BFFs. So just important to use those extensively. And then another thing that we just talked about is that I just found that the more I was interviewing, the more comfortable I felt just talking about myself and talking about my experiences. An interview process, it's meant for you to find the right fit just as much, if not more, than the company finding the right fit. So just be comfortable with whoever you're interviewing with, be yourself, and be able to communicate your experiences effectively. And that'll go a long way, much further than having all of the industry experience in the world or having a 4.0 GPA or something like that. Yeah. And so with all of that, I was lucky enough to score one of my top choice for fellowships. I feel like I should talk a little bit about what a fellowship is for those who might not be familiar. So a fellowship is basically a bridge between you graduating from pharmacy school and then entering the workforce within the pharmaceutical industry. It's usually a 1 to 2 year program that's focused within a specific functional area. So for me, mine is medical affairs, which is like a huge general umbrella term. And so I started my fellowship earlier this month. So it's been a week. And so I'm the medical affairs fellow at a company called Alnylam. And they are a mid-sized biotech company focused on RNAi therapeutics, which is a method of gene silencing. And so how it works basically is the company's drugs, they silence the production of the mRNA of disease-causing proteins, preventing them from being formed in the first place. And so it's very unique and complex science. And the company first started out with a focus in rare genetic diseases. And so that's what all of their commercial products are right now. That's the area that I'll be working in, but they are expanding their pipeline to include more common disease states as well, like hypertension and things like that. And so as a medical affairs fellow, like I mentioned, that's a pretty broad term. So different companies, that'll mean different things at different companies. For me, my role is actually primarily focused in medical publications. And so that includes driving the development of manuscripts and Congress presentations. We're presenting new clinical data and new analyses of clinical data. And so it also entails driving the publication plan and the strategy for the company. And then on top of that, I will have opportunities to take on additional projects within medical affairs as well. So things like medical communications, medical training, HEOR, medical strategy, etc. And so eventually I will really support the entire medical affairs function throughout my 2 years of the fellowship. And so for my future plans, kind of depends on how I enjoy my current position. Like I said, I really started last week, so I haven't really gotten to the bread and butter of things. But depending on how things go, I might stay within medical publications or maybe choose a role more focused on medical communications, and a lot of companies, depending on their size, medical communications and publications, they overlap a lot. But either way, I do want to stay within medical affairs and continue to be that scientific bridge between the company and the rest of the scientific community. I do want to stay within the rare disease space, and I do want to stay within the biotech sector versus a more big pharma setting. And then as I gain more strategic experience, I do hope to progress up the leadership chain. So those are just my vague future plans for now. And so I think this is one of the last slides, but just some last woman to woman advice. I love the quote, lift as you climb. I think it's important to uplift other women whenever you get the opportunity, and to surround yourself with team members and bosses who do the same. And then I came across this infographic recently, and I actually still have to get better at this. So this kind of resonated with me. But I mean, it's emailing like a boss. No matter who you are, what rank or position you may be in, your time is just as valuable as anyone else's. And so these are just some ways to rephrase some more passive phrases when emailing. But this is probably more relevant for when you enter the job force versus when you're like a student or an intern or something. So just take this with a grain of salt. Of course, always be respectful of your boss's time. But like I said, you're valuable. So keep that in mind whenever you're doing anything, really. And so that's really all I had for you guys. My email is here. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm always happy to provide mentorship, to answer any questions. Even if you just want like a friend, I'm down for that too. So just feel free to connect, and I'm happy to help with whatever stage you're in, whether you're in high school, undergrad, pharmacy school, beyond. I'm happy to do whatever I can to help you with anything, really. And so with that, that's all I have for you guys. I'll take any questions if anyone has.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Jois. We do have some questions for you. So the first question is, what are the best methods to grow and maintain a network?
So one thing that helped me, which I kind of talked about, is attending conferences. That's really a great opportunity to just meet like a whole pool of people with different backgrounds and different professions and things like that. It's a little intimidating at first, but definitely with experience, you get more and more comfortable putting yourself out there. The other thing that I've done is I've like cold messaged people on LinkedIn if they have like a role that sounds cool, or if they have a background similar to me and I'm just interested in learning about their career path, something like that. You'd be surprised. Like most people are very receptive to just answering questions from a stranger, just like having a phone call or a Zoom call with a stranger. So I've learned a lot that way. And like the worst thing that could happen when you do that is that they don't respond. So you're not losing anything, and you're potentially gaining so much out of that. So that's one aspect of networking, right? Is just meeting people. But what's even more important is maintaining that network. And so it doesn't have to be, weekly conversations. It doesn't even have to be monthly. One thing that I like to do is every year around the holidays, I'll like send emails to people that I like to stay in contact with, just being like, hey, like Happy New Year. How are things going since the last time we talked? Here's a life update from me. Looking forward to hearing from you, or something like that. So just something short and sweet. And that's just helped me, maintain like professional relationships, but also just gain that rapport with people, and just making those personal connections as well. And so those are just a couple of tips and a couple of things that I've done that have personally helped me grow and maintain my network.
Thank you for that. That was a very beautiful answer. Another question is, how do you get research experience as a high school student?
So I did not have research experience in high school. Props to you for being very proactive. Let me think. I really don't have a good answer for this. I feel like high school is a little too early for LinkedIn, because LinkedIn is like this huge beast. But I know that places, I'm from Maryland, so this is a little biased, but places like the FDA and NIH, they offer a lot of research internships for students, especially high school students. Um, I really don't have a good answer for this. I'm sorry. I probably like a Google search might be helpful as well. On LinkedIn, a they do have like job listings and things like that, but I don't know if they have opportunities for high school people. Um, what else? Yeah, that's like really as much as I can say to that. I know that, yeah, so like government agencies and things like that, I know that they offer internships to high school students. Some universities might, but I know that those are more geared towards undergrad students who've had a little bit more exposure to science. But it's worth, looking into. Sometimes at universities, you can email specific faculty members. Faculty members always have their science posted on like the university website, so you can kind of browse through that. If anything sounds interesting, their contact information is always on the website as well. So I'm sure that any PI or any head of a lab is open to having a conversation and bringing on a student if it's appropriate and if they have the bandwidth to do that.
And I totally agree. And thank you to the student who asked that question. You're being very proactive, and that's very good for your future. Next, a student asked, as a P4 student who's interested in industry, what things would you recommend doing from now until mid-year?
Dewan, you froze on me. I don't know if it's you or me.
I think you froze on me. I'm not sure. Let's see.
Make sure that you're communicating to make sure that you're communicating the impact of the different experiences that you've had well. What is it, July? So from now until, it's a little early right now, but kind of thinking about who you want to provide your letters of recommendation, how you want to format your cover letter. I would say in a few weeks, it would be a good idea to reach out to current fellows in positions that you're potentially interested in to kind of narrow down the list of places that you're going to apply to. Most of us started like a couple weeks ago, so I wouldn't do it now, because if someone asked me about my specifics about my fellowship, I don't have anything because I've just been training and onboarding and things like that. So I would wait like a month to reach out to current fellows, but definitely do that because you get a better idea of the specifics of the program and whether or not you'd be a good fit for that. And yeah, so that's basically the bread and butter of the application process is, speaking to fellows. CV is probably the most important thing. Cover letter, meh, but also important. And then letters of recommendation are kind of your four big things that you should be kind of looking at as you start to prepare for the fellowship application cycle.
And thank you, Bhavna. I think I accidentally went out of the Zoom for some reason. Yeah, did you answer the question from Amal? Was that the one you were on?
Yeah.
Okay, great, great. So now we can move on to Carol's question. So she asked, after taking a gap year, do you personally recommend other individuals take on one as well?
I think it kind of depends on your situation. It's hard to give a blanket answer. For me, financially, that was just the move for me. And just personally, I felt like I just matured a little bit during that gap year. Like I learned how to cook properly. I learned how to like take care of a house. And like you don't really get time to learn those like life things when you're always busy with school and stuff like that. So for me personally, I didn't regret it. And I actually didn't even plan to take a gap year. It was a little bit unexpected. So it ended up working for me. For some people, it's an extra year, right? It's an extra year where you're not making money or like making as much money as you could, or something like that. So it just depends on your personal situation. I mean, we have like, if you're going to pharmacy school, there's 4 years of that, and then taking a gap year is an additional year on top of that. So It's hard to give like a blanket recommendation. I'm glad I took one, just based on the reasons that I talked about.
And thank you for that response. The next question is, what if somebody already has a LinkedIn profile? How can they reach out to people and ask to be part of their research or just get to learn from them?
So on LinkedIn, you can message people as long as they have the capability of doing that. And so how I usually phrase it is, hello, whoever. My name is Bhavna. I'm a fourth year pharmacy student at the University of Maryland, interested in X, Y, and Z. I saw that you've done this, or I saw that you're at this company, or you're in this current position, and I wanted to learn more about it. Would you be willing to answer a few questions, or would you be willing to meet with me for a one-on-one for a quick 30 minutes? Just any phrasing like that. And like I said, people are usually pretty receptive to just a casual conversation. The part about the research that I was talking about, so that can be found on university websites or university websites. And so I would recommend emailing people if you're trying to like join a research lab or something like that, versus reaching out on LinkedIn. Emailing is a little bit more formal for something like that where you're kind of looking for a job. But so on LinkedIn, it's more for like casual conversation with people who have roles that you're interested in. And like literally, I know it sounds weird, but literally just messaging them being like, hello, I'm like, this is my background and this is what I would love to hear from you. If you have the time, then I would love to meet with you, or whatever. I just like whatever I just said. And so people are usually pretty receptive to mentoring and just answering questions. And people love talking about themselves too. So cold messaging on LinkedIn is, I know it sounds weird, but it's pretty effective. And then I got a private message saying that there are companies that take high school students and give them mentorship or even internships. So I didn't even know that. That's awesome. If anyone has like information like that that they want to share with the other people in this program, then feel free to, help each other and mentor each other. Your peers are one of your biggest allies and your biggest so just take advantage of this program and the other people that you're doing it with.
And I totally agree with that. Another question, which is from Ria, she asked, how did you know pharmacy school was the right fit for you, apart from med school or other science-related professions?
That's a good question. It's a loaded question. So I think for me, because my basic science research experiences in undergrad were in pharmacology, I was more interested in like the medicine part of medicine and like the drug part of medicine. I didn't want to go to med school, and like I wasn't interested in diagnosing patients. I wasn't interested in working with patients really, which sounds really bad. On like a one-on-one level or like a personal level. I wanted to do something that was at a higher level, a more global impact on like an entire patient population. And so basically I wanted knowledge about drugs and medicine, and not really the broad scope that you get with med school. And so I just thought pharmacy school was broad enough but narrow enough that encompassed all the things that I was interested in from a drug and medicine perspective.
Great response. Another question is, what is the best way to ask for a recommendation letter?
Good question. So ideally, your recommenders are people that you've worked closely with, or people who know you and what you're capable of on a professional level and on a personal level. And so one important thing is to make sure that you're asking well in advance, because people are busy and they're going to forget about timelines and all of that. And so you just want to ensure that they have enough time to provide you with the letter. And so there's no fancy way of asking. I mean, you can, depending on how close you are to the person, you can send them an email being like, hi, Dr. So-and-so, I'm applying to fellowships this cycle, and I I would love for you, would it be possible for you to provide a letter of recommendation? And some people, if you have like, if you aren't sure of your relationship with a certain individual, you can even ask them like, would you be willing or would you be able to provide me with a quality letter of recommendation or like a really good letter of recommendation? And most professors are pretty honest, you know, of like whether or not they would be able to. Usually people won't might not they usually don't say no. I think if anything they'll ask you to write your letter and then they'll tweak it as they see fit. But those are just some little tidbits on how to reach out for letter of recommendation.
And one last question is, how do you search for universities on LinkedIn? And is there any way you can search for them on LinkedIn?
I think you can. Yeah, you can definitely search by company. Like I think if you put in like a university name or a company in the search bar, then people from that university or company will come up. And I mean, I've spent like so much time just like searching through pages. And sometimes as you do that, the people you may know, or like there's like a column on that side. It's either people you may know or like people related to so and so. So I've definitely used that. But I think like there are a lot of filters on LinkedIn that also help kind of narrow down your search. I would have to like look back at LinkedIn and play around with it to give you a better answer, but definitely utilize the filters, try to search based on like the company or the university and just try to go from there.
And I totally agree with that answer as well. And oh, we have another question. So this question says, how fluid is the industry? Can I go from regulatory affairs to medical communication?
That is a good question.
Mm-hmm.
So industry is relatively fluid. It kind of depends on your background and your experiences. At the end of the day, as long as you can speak to your current and previous experiences and then speak to your motivation for applying to a position that's slightly different than your current position, and as long as you can eloquently present that, then I see no problem with moving laterally. Of course, there are some lateral moves that are harder than others. So I know a lot of people go from like medical affairs to commercial, whereas like commercial to medical is probably a little harder because you have to kind of remove yourself from that business mindset and go into the medical mindset. And a lot of people in commercial don't really have a medical background to do that. From regulatory to med, I feel like is something that's doable. If I feel like the flip might be a little bit harder because regulatory, you know, there are a lot of regulations obviously that you have to know and be familiar with. The entire industry has so many acronyms, but I think regulatory might have the most. And so just like knowing that jargon and that like that nomenclature is like really an asset within regulatory. So that might be just a learning curve from going to med to regulatory. From regulatory to medical affairs, it's just like it's a different perspective. You know, within regulatory affairs, you're trying to get the drug approved, whereas within medical affairs, you have to have a little bit of a scientific acumen, which is why PharmDs are so well prepared to be within the medical affairs space. You have to be willing to kind of look at the data, interpret it, and kind of understand it, and then tell your own story about the data to the scientific community. So at the end of the day, like I said, it kind of just depends on your motivations for making the lateral move and whether you're able to speak to it and kind of defend yourself on why you want to transition from one functional area to the other. It's definitely possible, but just make sure you're aware of the different skills and the differences between the skills that you need for one functional area versus the other.
Great response. And if anyone else doesn't have any questions, we can conclude the program here. And as always, if y'all want to stay in contact with Dr. Bhavna Jois, here is her contact information. So it's bhavna.jois@gmail.com, and you are welcome to also connect with her on LinkedIn, which like Dr. Jois said, is a great way to connect with people and really get to know Dr. Jois. You know, she seems like a great mentor to have, especially if you want to enter the industry line.
Cool.
And
Thank you everyone for the awesome questions. Once again, feel free to reach out if you ever need anything.
of course. You know, I hope everyone has a great day. The next session will be on Wednesday with Amy Akoshoik, who is a current pharmacy student at the Medical University of South Carolina. She will be sharing her experience working in Galderma. So thank you to everyone who has showed up today. We love your participation and your questions, and I hope everyone has a great rest of their week. Okay. Bye, everyone.